What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Infamous Project. Today we're actually at my new commercial shop, and it's been a little bit in terms of trying to get stuff organized and get the layout right, so on and so forth. So probably similar space, maybe a little bit more compared to what I had before, but the most important thing, I'm in a cul-de-sac. There's just a little bit of crushed limestone, but I don't have like a half-mile long dirt dusty road to drive down, which is probably the most important thing. A little bit further away than I was, but we have an insulated building. We have two main bay doors, so more access there, and I feel like it's just more functional space with room to grow. You can see there's tons of stuff in the back there, and as long as tip goes in the direction that I want it to go, hopefully I'll end up bleeding all the way down to the backside there. So anybody want to invest, you let me know. Got some more bend pack lifts in here. Left my tuxedo at the old shop and sold it off. It wasn't worth moving it when I could just get a new one put up, and one that goes higher and one that is wider. So guys, I know that a lot of you, well, if you're watching this, you own a Foxbody, or maybe you want to own a Foxbody. And if you're gonna get a two-post, like, I get it, sometimes you have height restrictions and everything else, but if you can put a taller lift in your shop, by all means. And it's not just for the ability to go higher just because. Let me tell you, when you can walk underneath the hoist arms and not accidentally hit your head off one of these, that's of benefit. When you can get the car up high enough when you're trying to do stuff in the transmission tunnel or whatever, and you know, you're not having your head cocked like this. And I know my good friend Mr. Notorious, you know, he's 6'6", so he can definitely benefit from a tall lift. The other nice thing is just getting stuff up and out of the way. If you are sort of using it as a storage lift, it's great. So really happy with that. I got another 4-post slim over here, and Celine race car, and the other Lightning that I got, which is sitting here, that's actually sold, waiting for the buyer to come pick it up. And a lot of us know the buyer. I'm just not allowed to say who the buyer is because I guess he's trying to surprise some people or something. Anyways, Chuck's 1991 GT, the titanium frost light titanium on titanium, and this thing just came back from Red Dog's custom paint, and that engine bay is all smoothed out like factory. No Scott Rod panels. None of that stuff. All the backside, everything was done. Everything was welded shut and smoothed out, and this car looks the part. In fact, I'm going to put it down in a minute here, but you might as well get a quick little peek of the underside of this thing. Now, Chuck had already had this painted black on the underside here. There's his old drive shaft safety loop and subframe connectors. He's actually got through floor subframes that you can see from inside the car. And his Ford 9, which this is probably going to be coming out. We need to find probably a normal 8.8 with the disc set up. This guy's got 410s in the rear, which is way too high of a gear for street use in reality. So when he was racing, doing all those things, it was perfect. And yeah, we're gonna have to get a fuel system in here. But thankfully, you know, all the work that was done to this car is pretty much reversible. One thing that we're going to reverse today is, well, you can see what I got here. I got the Sawzall, I got the Hacksaw, I got a bunch of batteries, and a bunch of blades. And this car's got quite the cage in it, and the cage is going to come out. I know Chuck's going to be a little sad because it's probably what he remembers of the car, but honestly, guys, it's just way too much for the street. We talked about maybe just removing from the hoop behind the front seats forward, because it goes up and over across the top of the windshield, down through the speaker grills, all that stuff. I know a lot of people think that cages are cool, and they are. I put a cage in my first 90 notch that I had, and you know what I mean? It was like, oh yeah, man, I got a roll cage, I'm badass, and I got a stock motor, but looks cool, right? Reality is, on the street, it's not probably the safest thing to have. Reality is they're meant for the track when you're wearing a helmet. If something should happen, if your helmet hits off the roll cage, that's not that big of a deal. You're protecting your head. The roll cage is going to protect you if you roll or whatever other impacts that might be coming in towards those bars, whether it's the door bars or whatever it is. However, on the street, you don't have a helmet on, something happens and you turn and flip around, you conk your head off that roll bar, might not be a good time. So it's something to consider. I mentioned to Chuck and he's like, oh, you know, I never really thought about it that way. And it's just like, knock on wood, somewhere, you know, we hope that that day never happens, but you just never know. And it might not be us. It's usually somebody else who is the cause of the mayhem that could happen out there when you're driving, especially this day and age. Nobody knows how to drive. So anyways, let's put this car down. We will look at the cage a little bit more closely, and we're going to get right into it and chopping the cage out. You guys are probably wondering, you know, ultimately what's going to happen with this car, what motor, all of that good stuff. Well, I'll spoil it right now. The Kenny Bell motor that came out of Justin's Black Notch project is actually going into this car with the transmission. So now you've probably got a pretty good idea of the direction that this car is going to go and how it's potentially going to look in the end. Well, at least with the hood open, right? Suspension is to be determined. We're still going through the final little nitty-gritty details on that. It'll have updated brakes, the Brembos, and all of that other good stuff. And wheels and tires, we don't know yet. But anyways, guys, let's get the car down and start cutting. Car is back down on the ground, and you can see now just how awesome this engine bay looks. I know Chuck's really happy with the outcome, as am I. Red Dog does some really nice work. And again, this is all if the factory hadn't drilled any holes in any of this. This is pretty much how it would look. We did remove the sway bar mounts from here, just because Chuck thinks maybe he'll want a Godzilla swap or something similar in the future. So we shave those off now, and we'll most likely convert to the SN95 style sway bar mounts, which go on the underside of the frame rail here. We'll be doing the same thing in Jerry's car, sitting back there. But here you go, guys. Super clean car. Estimated about 14,000 original miles, if I remember correctly. I'm sure Chuck will chime in and let us know, but you know, when you can see quarter window moldings like this, it's a treat. It really is. There are a couple little war wounds from over the years which suck, and you know, Chuck didn't want to have to paint the panel because that's what we would have had to have done in order to fix that. So that'll just be the spot, we'll call it, right? Every car needs the spot, so that way everything else, fingers crossed, doesn't get messed or compromised with. So let me go ahead and open these doors up here. It is why I put it down on the ground. So you can see he did some custom inserts here. And funny thing is, right, his car's a 91, right? Manufactured in November of 1990. And he's actually got the inserts on the door panels. Usually that's a 90 only thing. And I actually asked him, I said, Chuck, did you swap your door panels out for 90 style? He's like, no, my car must have just got a set of the 90 style door panels in it. So never seen that before. There's a first for everything. And well, yeah, gave him the option to kind of customize. It's cool because it does very much go with the exterior color of the car. And here's the cage. So here's what we're working with. So you can see the through floor subframe connector there. You can see the cage running all the way down along there. our door bars, and up and over and around and to the back and everything else. So it's going to be a lot of cutting. And the reason why I say it's actually going to be a lot of cutting is because, well, the headliner is actually in the car. And that was part of the challenge as well, to say, oh, you know, let's keep the hoop and everything going back. It'd be really hard to get a blade up here and get all this cleaned up real nice, because like, I don't think we're squeezing that. We might be able to get that headliner out. And here's my understanding, because some of you guys are probably like, man, how'd they weld up so close in there? So Chuck told me that apparently they cut through the floor in the front, and they ran, this was kind of like prefabbed, and they ran the cage down through the floor, which allowed them to do the welding. And then they lifted the cage back up, and then ultimately welded the plates and welded the front portions of the cage down to the floor, which is pretty ingenious. I guess when you do roll cages for a living, you would know all of the tips and tricks to get said stuff done. Now, my plan is sort of the reverse of install. I'm actually probably going to cut a section out here and here, and then cut some of the hoop out here to essentially allow me to lower some of the upper portion of the cage down, which will allow me at that point to be able to cut through the cage where I need to cut it to get all of the pieces out. So that's pretty much the name of the game, folks. I'm going to be using a Sawzall. So Sawzall isn't going to throw sparks, and it's not going to throw a whole bunch of dust and debris and everything else. So the question is how close can I get to the welds with the Sawzall? And then from there, am I going to have to sand or file or grind some stuff off? So we're going to try and get our cuts as close as possible with those blades, and hopefully, you know what I mean, be able to get the cage out with ease. Little update on the surgery here, and we are about to cut the last bar off here in the back, and I've actually got the front end strapped up with a strap and blankets down on the roof, make sure nothing's scratching or anything like that. And what that's doing is taking the weight off the front, so when I cut this, it's not going to try and go crashing down. And I'm hoping that there'll be enough room to potentially maneuver this thing out through the hatch and through the back here, and then all that's going to be left is what's left of the hoop and the crosser bars down there. Surgery was a pretty good success. We got some really good incisions and, you know, clean cuts and minimizing any infection and everything else. Guys, honestly, it did feel like operating on this car right now. Here is all of the cage cut and pretty much symmetrical. Anything that I did on one side, I chopped it the same way on the other side. Took my time and just kind of came up with a little bit of strategy. Again, I didn't want to have to put that Sawzall anywhere near the headliner, so any of those main roof pieces and anywhere near the rear plastics or anywhere like that, because that stuff was pretty much encased in there. Now, could I have maybe snuck the headliner out or the rear plastics? Maybe. However, one really important thing to consider this day and age: the cage was welded in back in the early 90s. The plastics were new. The plastics would have had more flexibility. They would have been fresher. It's kind of like an old tire. An old tire gets hard over time. Plastics become brittle over time. So even if maybe they had snuck those rear plastics in there back in the day, why would I remove all of that hardware and try and bend and flex potentially fragile plastic and risk cracking or damaging some of this minty black interior? So I opted to do it the way that I did. Maybe somebody else maybe would want to do it a different way. And I tried to get my cuts as close and as clean to the body as I could. Now, of course, you could go over this with a flappy disc or whatever. You could grind it right down. Some people would probably try and maybe make it look like the cage was never there. I don't think we need to go to that extreme, because the car still has through floor subframe connectors. And let's be real, the car has been modified heavily back in the day, and it's still going to be modified in that engine bay. So we can't just expect to take this thing 100% back to stock. It's just not worth the energy or the investment. The car is what it is at this stage. So you can see down here, same thing. I might be able to zip and come in with the hacksaw and cut a little bit more of some of that off. So you can see, here's the tools that I use: full-blown Sawzall and then the mini hacksaw. And guys, this guy is great getting into tight, close places, especially if your blade is possibly going to hit something down here. You got a lot more control with this guy. So he came in really handy. Went through 2 batteries. The 8's actually still going, and I think that's just a little 3, if I remember right. It is. And one of those blades was already used. Actually, 2 of the blades were already used. So call it what? 5 blades, 5 fresh blades. Managed to get through all these cuts with ease, and a couple batteries, couple tools. The only thing that I haven't got, so we're going to leave the through floor subframe connectors here, because like in reality I could cut this here and I could probably cut it here, but guys, how many people sit in the back seat of a Fox? The factory seats still clear this, the tracks go over that, so these are going to stay. These, however, these still need to come out. And remember I was talking about the hacksaw getting into small places? Well, I just need to finish cutting this off, but more importantly, they welded up and along here, and it is much more challenging to cut through weld than it is the metal itself. So yeah, I'm gonna have to spend a little bit of time in here. So that's the only thing that I've left. I'm gonna leave this part right here. That's okay. And everything else is good, untouched, unharmed. Headliner, all nice and minty. And you can see where there was some pressure here and there, and I don't know what that was. That wasn't me. I think it was pressure. I think it's on the other side as well. It might have been from the gusset. Or maybe, yeah, let's see here. That's going towards the front. So maybe these welds here, or maybe the zip tie actually. Here's something that tells us that they actually snuck the plastics in after the fact. Look at here. So we can pop these off, get this passed back through the way that it should be, and it's actually the same on that side. So as you guys can see, all of the factory sound deadening was all removed, right? So we'll go ahead, we'll do kill mat, and that'll be another thing too. Once we, maybe clean this up a little bit more, the kill mat's going to go over that and it's going to hide it, and you're not going to see it, and it's going to be fine. So gonna make sure we get a bunch of kill mat down on the back of the firewall there, because all of that insulation, all of that sound deadening, this is almost like the shitbox Fox was in reality. So we'll get that all tidied up, cleaned up, and that'll mean we can actually start putting things back together on this interior. And he's got all his factory black stuff here, like minty shape. It's always amazing when you see like a sub 20,000 mile car's black interior. Now he is a little disappointed about his factory carpet because obviously it was cut to accommodate for the cage. And I told him, you know, maybe we can, if needed, take a little bit of material from the back here and maybe do some creative gluing from the back side, and maybe allow him to actually use this. In fact, I don't know if they've actually, it looks like they did take a little bit of material out here. So I might drop this off to local upholstery shop and see if they can't do some creative work there and save this factory carpet, because yeah, it's actually in real nice shape. Now, that is where the crosser went down in the back. It's cut there and there. So if you guys are wondering what I mean by the crossers down in the back, those were the guys that were going straight down here. So they ripped it so that the carpet could kind of curve up and around that bar. Anyways, guys, I am sweating profusely. Like, my hat's just dripping sweat at this stage. So I'm going to cool down some, drink some water, stay hydrated. So I'm going to end this video for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed a little bit of the cage removal here. And until next time, we'll see you back here on the Infamous Project.